My father slid the paper across the kitchen table and tapped it twice with his finger. "Sign it, Rachel." "It's the right thing to do for this family." I looked down at the transfer agreement, the one that would hand over 11 years of my work, my company, my name on the door, to my younger brother. The brother who had never once set foot in the building. Slower, emotional, I picked up the pen, and for 1 second I actually thought about doing it, but let me back up. Because to understand why I was even sitting at that table, you need to understand my family first. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why I brought a second document to that dinner. One nobody in my family knew existed. My name is Rachel Whitfield. I'm 36 years old, and for the first 35 of those years, I was the responsible one. Pause for effect. Every family has a role they hand you before you're old enough to say no thank you. Mine was decided somewhere around age 7, the day my little brother Connor was born. I became the helper, the fixer, the one who didn't need attention because I could take care of myself. Connor became the golden boy, the one who needed protecting, encouraging, celebrating for things I did quietly and got a nod for, if I got anything at all. My dad, Gerald Whitfield, built a small hardware distribution business from nothing back in the 80s, Whitfield Supply. It was never huge, but it was steady, and growing up, that business was the fourth member of our family. Dad talked about it at dinner. Dad brought us to the warehouse on weekends. And even as a kid, I loved it there, the smell of sawdust and cardboard, the hum of the forklifts, the way Dad's whole posture changed when he walked the floor. Like he was king of something small but entirely his. Connor hated it. He'd complain about the smell, ask to sit in the truck and play games instead. I never understood why that never seemed to bother my father the way it should have. Pause for effect. When I was 17, I started doing the books after school. By 19, I was running weekend shifts. Dad used to introduce me to customers as the brains of the operation, and I'd glow for days on that. It was the closest thing to real praise I ever got from him. Connor, meanwhile, dropped out of 2 different colleges, borrowed money from Dad 3 separate times for business ideas that folded within a year, a car detailing service, an energy drink line. A crypto thing I still don't fully understand. Every single time, Dad bailaid him out without blinking, and every single time I said nothing because that's what the responsible one does. She doesn't make waves, she just keeps showing up. Slower, here's the part that matters most though. Here's the part my family never knew. 6 years ago, my father's health started slipping, his knees, his heart, the whole picture. He was tired. He didn't want to run Whitfield Supply anymore, but he also didn't want to sell it to a stranger. So he came to me privately and asked if I wanted to buy him out. I said yes before he finished the sentence. I took out a loan against my condo. I emptied my savings. I worked 18-hour days for 2 years to pay him back in full, with interest, exactly as we'd agreed on paper. It was legally, completely, 100% my company. My name was on the LLC. My signature was on every lease, every vendor contract, every payroll check. Pause for effect, and I told no one, not Connor, not my mother, Deanne. Nobody except my husband, Mark, and my father himself. Why keep it secret? Because I knew the second Connor found out I owned it outright, it would become a family conversation. A family opportunity, a family entitlement. I wanted just once to have something that was completely, quietly mine, something no one could show up and ask a piece of. Pause for effect. I let my father keep telling people he was still involved in the business, technically true since I kept him on as a paid consultant for appearances and because, honestly, some habits are hard to let go of, even his. I didn't know, not then, that the secrecy I thought was protecting me was actually setting a trap I'd walk straight into. The trouble didn't start all at once. It started in small cuts, the way it always does in families like mine. Pause for effect. It was Sunday dinner, about 8 months before everything came to a head, and my mother was setting the table when she said, casually, like she was mentioning the weather, "Connor's thinking about getting into the hardware business. Your father says he could really use a project like that." I remember my fork stopping halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean, the hardware business?" I asked. "Whitfield Supply, honey. Your dad's company. Connor thinks he could really turn it around, modernize it a little." I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad's company hasn't needed turning around," I said carefully. "It's doing better than it ever has." "Well," my mother said, refilling Connor's water glass without being asked, "your father built that place. It only makes sense it stays with a Whitfield man, doesn't it? Slower, emotional. I want you to sit with that sentence for a second because I certainly did. A Whitfield man. As if I wasn't a Whitfield, as if the 11 years I'd poured into that business, the years I'd bled into it, didn't count because of my chromosomes. I didn't correct her. I still hadn't told anyone the company was legally mine. So instead I just said, I don't think Connor's ever expressed interest in hardware before, which was true, and let the conversation die there. Pause for effect, it didn't die. It just went underground, resurfacing every few weeks like a weed you think you've pulled. 2 months later, my father asked me to give Connor a tour of the warehouse so he understands the business. I agreed, thinking maybe this was harmless. Maybe Connor was finally growing up and wanted to learn something real. Connor showed up 40 minutes late in a blazer for a warehouse tour and spent the entire hour on his phone. At one point he gestured at my head of logistics, a woman named Priya who'd been with the company 9 years, and said, "So what's her deal? Is she, like, essential?" Because if I came in, I'd probably want my own people, if I came in, like it was a door standing open, waiting for him to walk through it whenever he felt like it. Pause for effect, I told my husband Mark about it that night. Mark is an accountant, calm in a way I'm not, and he's been the steadiest thing in my life since we got married 9 years ago. He said if I came in, I told him, still furious, pacing our kitchen, like it's his to come into. Mark set down his coffee. "Rachel, you need to tell your dad you own it outright, not someday. Now, before this snowballs into something you can't undo." "It's not that simple," I said. "If I tell them now, it looks like I'm reacting to Connor, like I'm being petty. You're not being petty. You bought the company, you paid your father in full, that's not petty, that's fact." He paused and then said the thing that stuck with me since. "You keep waiting for the right time to stand up for yourself, and there's never going to be a right time in this family. They'll always find a reason it's the wrong moment." Slower, emotional, I didn't listen. I told myself I'd handle it soon. I told myself my father would never actually let it go that far, that some line existed in his head between Connor's daydream and an actual plan. I was wrong about that line. I just didn't know it yet. Pause for effect, the next slight came at my father's 65th birthday party. My mother had put together a slideshow, decades of Whitfield family photos set to music. There was a photo of me at 19, elbow deep in the warehouse ledgers, and my mother's voiceover recorded for the slideshow said, "And here's Rachel, always so willing to help out. Help out." At my father's own retirement business, in a photo of me doing actual accounting work at 19 years old, I was framed as a helper, a volunteer, not an owner, not even really an employee. Later that night, my Aunt Carol cornered me by the dessert table, the way aunts do, and said, "It's so nice your father's finally letting Connor take the reins. He needs the responsibility, don't you think? Might really settle him down." I excused myself to the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub for 10 minutes just breathing. Pause for effect, that was the same week I finally called my therapist, Dana, and booked an emergency session. I'd been seeing her on and off for 2 years, mostly for work stress, but this was different. "They're talking about handing my company to my brother," I told her, "and I haven't even told them it's mine." Dana didn't say much at first, she just let me talk, the way good therapists do. Then she asked, "What do you think will happen if you tell them the truth right now, today?" I thought about it. "I think my dad will feel humiliated that he's been telling people he's still involved in a company he doesn't own. I think my mother will accuse me of hiding things out of spite. And I think Connor will feel entitled to it anyway, because that's how he's felt about everything his whole life. So," Dana said gently, "you're protecting them from a truth that only threatens your peace, not theirs. Does that feel fair to you?" Slower, emotional, it didn't, it never had. But naming it out loud in that office was the first time I let myself really feel how unfair it was, not as background noise I'd learned to live with, but as something I didn't have to keep accepting. I left that session and drove straight to a lawyer's office, not to change anything about the company that was already airtight, already mine. I went to make sure it stayed that way, no matter what my father tried to pull. Pause for effect, I had no idea, sitting in that lawyer's waiting room, how soon I'd need what she gave me. 3 weeks later, my father called and asked me to come to Sunday dinner early, so we can talk business before everyone else gets there. Pause for effect, I should have known from his voice. It had that careful, rehearsed quality, the tone of a man who'd practiced a speech in his bathroom mirror. I walked into my parents' dining room and found Connor already sitting there, next to my father, a manila folder in front of him like a prop in a play he was excited to perform in. My mother hovered by the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching. "Sit down, sweetheart," my father said. He never called me sweetheart. That should have been my second warning. Slower, he slid the folder across the table toward me. I opened it. Inside was a document titled Business Transfer and Assignment Agreement, prepared, I'd later learn, by a lawyer Connor's girlfriend's father knew socially. It named Connor Whitfield as the incoming sole owner and operator of Whitfield Supply, effective immediately upon signature, my signature. "Dad," I said slowly, "what is this?" "It's time," he said. "You've done a wonderful job holding down the fort, Rachel, really, we're all so proud of you, but Connor's ready to step up now. He's got real ideas. Modernizing the branding, digital marketing, all of it. I think it's time we let a Whitfield man take this into the next generation." Pause for effect, there it was again, a Whitfield man. Like I'd been a temporary caretaker my whole life, a placeholder until the real heir was ready. "I'm not holding down anything," I said, and I could hear my own voice shaking, not from weakness but from the sheer effort of staying calm. "Dad, this is my company. I bought it from you. I paid you in full. 6 years ago, you have the wire transfers, you signed the bill of sale yourself." My mother made a small, sharp sound from the doorway. "Wait. What is she talking about, Gerald?" My father's face did something complicated, a flicker of guilt, quickly buried under bluster. "It was a formality," he said, "a tax thing mostly. I still consider it family property, Rachel, you know that. I'm still consulting there every month." "You're a paid consultant," I said. "I pay you $2,000 a month to come in twice a week and tell stories to the sales team. That's not ownership, Dad. That's a part-time job I created for you because I love you." Slower, emotional Connor, who had been quiet through all of this, finally spoke. And his voice had the particular whine of a man who'd already spent the money in his head. "Rachel, come on, you've had it for years, it's my turn." "Dad said." "Dad doesn't get to say," I cut in. "Dad doesn't own it, I do." The room went very still. Pause for effect. "Sign the paper, Rachel," my father said again, and this time there was steel under the softness. "It's the right thing to do for this family. You know how much this would mean to Connor. He's finally trying to build something real. Don't you want to support your brother? And here's the thing I need you to understand about that moment, for 1 second, one single second, 36 years of training, almost one. 36 years of being the one who doesn't make waves, who smooths things over, who gives so everyone else can be comfortable." My hand actually reached for the pen sitting beside the folder. Pause for effect, hold beat, I picked it up. I looked at my father, who was already starting to relax, already halfway into a smile. I looked at Connor, practically vibrating with anticipation, already, I'd bet, texting his girlfriend under the table about his new company. I looked at my mother, still standing frozen by the door. Finally, starting to understand something wasn't right. And then I set the pen down, not on the transfer agreement, beside it. "I'm not signing this," I said. "But I did bring something for you to sign." Slower, emotional, I reached into my bag and pulled out my own folder, the one my lawyer had prepared 3 weeks earlier. The day I walked out of Dana's office and drove straight there without stopping to overthink it. "Dad, I need you to sign an acknowledgement. It confirms in writing what the sale documents from 6 years ago already prove, that Whitfield Supply is 100% owned by me, Rachel Whitfield, and that you have no ownership interest. And haven't for 6 years. I'm having it filed with the state business registry, along with the original bill of sale, so this," I tapped Connor's folder, "can never happen again. To me, or honestly to protect you too, Dad, from telling people something that isn't true." Connor's face went white. "Wait, you're telling me this whole time you already owned it?" "Yes." For 6 years, I looked at him, and for the first time in my life I didn't soften it. "You wanted in, Connor, you can't get into something that was never a family asset to begin with. It's a business I built, with money I earned and paid back myself." My father didn't sign anything that night. He sat there, jaw tight, staring at the folder like it had personally betrayed him. "You went behind my back," he said finally. "You got a lawyer against your own family." "No, Dad," I said, and my voice was steady now, steadier than I expected. "I got a lawyer to protect what's mine, because my own family tried to take it from me at a dinner table, with a folder somebody else's father drew up. I didn't go behind your back. I found out I needed protection from you, and I got it." Slower, emotional, my mother finally moved from the doorway and sat down heavily in her chair. 6 years, she said quietly. You've owned that business for 6 years and you never told us. Would it have mattered? I asked her honestly. If I'd told you the day I signed the papers, would tonight have gone any differently? Or would Connor just have started angling for it 6 years earlier instead of 8 months ago? Nobody answered that, because we all knew the answer. Pause for effect. Connor found his voice again, and it cracked with something between anger and humiliation. So what, you're just going to sit there and gloat? You always do this, Rachel. You always have to be the one who's better at everything. I'm not gloating, Connor. I'm telling you the truth you never had to hear before, because Mom and Dad handed you everything you asked for since you were 7 years old. This time, there was nothing to hand you. It was never theirs to give. Slower, emotional, let this land. I stood up. My hands were steady, which surprised me because my heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. Dad, I love you. I paid you every dollar we agreed on time for 2 straight years because I respect what you built and I wanted to honor it. But I will not sign my company over to Connor because you're more comfortable with a man's name on the door. That's not love and it's not fair, and I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. I picked up my folder, left the transfer agreement exactly where it was, untouched, unsigned, and walked to the front door. Pause for effect. My mother caught up to me on the porch. She looked smaller out there than she had at the table. He didn't mean it the way it sounded, she said. Your father, he doesn't know how to see you the way he sees Connor. It's not that you're less. He just doesn't have the words for what you are. Then maybe it's time he learned some, I said, and for once. I didn't apologize for how that sounded. I filed the ownership acknowledgement with the state the following week. My lawyer also sent a formal letter to my father clarifying, in plain legal language, that his role at Whitfield Supply was strictly as a paid consultant, terminable at will, with no ownership stake now or in the future. He didn't take it well. For about 2 months, he barely spoke to me except in clipped, formal sentences at the handful of family gatherings I still attended. Connor stopped coming to dinners with me in the room entirely, which honestly felt more like relief than loss. Slower, my mother was the one who came around first. She called me on a Tuesday out of nowhere and said, I watched that slideshow again, the one from your father's birthday. I heard myself say you were always so willing to help out, and Rachel, I felt sick. That's not what you were doing, you were running a company. I'm sorry I never saw it. That phone call meant more to me than I expected it to. Pause for effect. My father took longer. 6 weeks after that dinner, he showed up unannounced at the warehouse on a Tuesday afternoon, the way he used to when the business was his. I braced myself for another confrontation. Instead, he stood in the doorway of my office, with my name on the plaque outside it, a plaque I'd had made the week after that dinner, and he just looked around for a long moment. You've done more with this place in 6 years than I did in 20, he said finally. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say out loud. It wasn't a full apology. My father has never been a man who apologizes cleanly, but it was something, and I decided to let it be enough for that day. Pause for effect. 6 months later, Whitfield Supply signed its biggest contract in company history, a regional distribution deal I'd been working for over a year to land. I hosted a small dinner to celebrate, and this time I sent the invitations myself. My father came. He raised his glass and in front of everyone said, to Rachel, who built something real and who I should have said that about a long time ago. Connor didn't come to that dinner. Last I heard, he'd taken a sales job at a friend's startup and was, according to my mother, finally figuring some things out on his own. I hope that's true, I really do. But it's not my job to hand him the shortcuts anymore. Slower, emotional. As for me, I still run Whitfield Supply, still love the smell of the warehouse on a quiet morning before the trucks arrive. But now, everyone in that family knows exactly whose name is on the door. And I never have to sit across a dinner table again, pen in hand, wondering if keeping the peace is worth losing myself. I used to think keeping quiet was the same thing as keeping the peace. It's not. Sometimes the most peaceful thing you can do for yourself is finally tell the truth, even when it costs you something. If you've ever dealt with a family like mine, the golden child, the invisible one, the parent who just can't seem to see you clearly, I want to hear about it. Tell me your story in the comments below, and if you liked this one, hit subscribe because I've got a new story just like it every single week.